let the people see what the people need. I have a dream, oh, I have a dream, to see the people free from the pain within. Them they go, them they go, them they go. Them they fight, them they quarrel, them they go. One silly, the other needy, the other greedy. I tell them if them no hungry, make them scatter, go their separate ways.
My name is Somawumi. Africa, oh, Africa, oh, Africa, 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 oh, Africa, 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 Africa.
Ça fait rêver, ça fait vibrer, ça fait danser. Oh Africa, ça fait rêver, ça fait vibrer, ça fait danser. Oh Africa, ayula barata nyabisa tesorola. Oh, yewala malilela.
La Guinée, le Gabon, Sénégal, le Bénin, Yaoundé.
Oh, quel nouveau pays. Africa,
The motherland that brought us far is the one we talk about. No matter where you end up, trust me, your roots are shouting loud. Oh, from Mozambique to Uganda, from Morocco to Douala, see the hills and see the river, see Orlando, Zambezi, Origi, Congo, Lagos to Kilimanjaro. We have everything we need. We are strong and we are free. Africa, 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 oh, Africa, my own Africa, 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 Africa,
Mr. DJ, music no daylight, make you just stay jam, as we dey try survive. Country hard oh, but we go overcome. Forget your sorrow, yeah we overcome. Ojoro dande, but we go overcome. Ojoro dande, but we go overcome. Yeah. Republic. work for illiterate. Unemployment on the replay. Most of guys at the top, no get certificate. Chinese doctor don't escape. Our health minister no know where they did. God bless our health workers. We do represent on the front line. Nigerians are suffering and smiling. It's time for Nigerians to wake up. Biafra say they won't break
Country
up.
hard, oh, but we go back up. Forget your sorrow, yeah, we overcome. Ojoro dande, but we go back up. Ojoro dande, but we go back up. Yeah, our people say they funny, oh yeah. They go they complain plenty, oh yeah. But when it reach them turny, oh yeah. They say go do so funny, oh yeah. Come here, oh yeah. Our money don't growing, and it don't they fly like la ba la ba la ba la ba la ba la ba la.
Dollar and a 400 naira. When will dollar equal naira? Why we they borrow from China? Just to service our budget. Lack of proper direction. We need economic revolution. If the poor man no go fit sleep, I swear the rich no go fit sleep. Leaders where they share coconut tree. Now their own head where they go break. God, they say you be lazy youth. Election time they go use you. Music no daylight. Make you just they jam. As we they try survive.
Country hard, oh, but we go overcome. Forget your sorrow, yeah, we overcome. Ojoro dande, but we go back up. Ojoro dande, but we go back up. Yeah, country hard, oh, but we go back up. Forget your sorrow, but we go back up. Ojoro dande, but we go back up. Ojoro dande, but we go back up. Yeah, our people say they funny, oh yeah. They go they complain plenty, oh yeah. But when it reach them turny, oh yeah. They say go do so funny, oh yeah.
We give thanks for this time and this space that we can witness the human race. Right now, the growth, the life, the whole experience of everything that is happening around us. We give thanks for that. We give praises to Jah, Rastafari, Haile Selassie the first. Every time, respect, honor, boom.
Continental. But yo, yeah. Say. Woke up one Sunday morning. Me feel like Muhammad Ali. Only greatness Say me pray to God every morning. Perfect that life for me. So bring good vibes. No you me say African boy with an African vibe from Nigeria. Boy them I love me in my way. Yeah, oh. African boy with an African vibe from Nigeria. Boy them I love me in my way. Oh. Yeah, see. Continental with the sound of it coming. Feel the rhythm from me body and me soul. Good tidings, you know me have to come with. Say me bad like that, say you know. Hey, you know the real, I recognize my thing. Come vibe with me, I bet you like my thing, yeah. And got your body looking nice and bad. The way I vibing, I bet you like my art, yeah. African boy with an African vibe from Nigeria. Boy, them I love me in my way. Yeah, oh. African boy with an African vibe from Nigeria. Boy, them I love me in my way. Yeah. Young man, big up yourself.
Tryna get $1,000,000 in all these safe. Make the money and be happy for yourself. Big man, 10 all them girls to yourself. Steady and with my mic guy. Touch me body, I feel like one. Said now who do the beat now? Teflon. Say me do this for the losers and the champions. African boy with an African vibe from Nigeria. Boy, them I love me in my way. African boy with an African vibe from Nigeria. Boy, them I love me in my way. Continental boy, report live. King Perry Pandu, steady and with my mic guy. Touch me body, I feel like one. Said now who do the beat, not Teflon. Say me do this for the losers and the champions.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. We are about to start soon. Can I ask everyone to take their seat? Thank you.
Do it if you think you can. Do it if you're better than. Some of you think you can, but nobody better than. Citizen at the world. You know we not dead all. My music no get boundaries. So better keep my Grammys, yeah. No, yeah. Hey, mommy, sit back and just smile. No, yeah. Anything I young, you go know, say I'm in, no, yeah. Hey, mommy, sit back and just smile. Put you in a Bentley, Fendi, Gucci, and Givenchy, my time be presidente, kick butt like a big sensei, carry ball like a big country. For where I stand, me a the campy. So make you know, try to offend me. You know my guys, come pull up gently. Too many things I see, with they make man think, with they cost out thing all the time. Positive vibration, and my vibration stay true to myself from day one. Too many things I see, with they make man think. Me nah need no validation to write on. Stick to the gang, go away.
Welcome, everyone. We will start. So I am Mary, the event coordinator. So welcome to all of you today, speakers and participants, both in person and online on our YouTube broadcast. So to open the event without further delay, I will invite Doreen Robinson, Deputy Director of the Ecosystems Division, UNEP, to deliver her opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Music. We're not supposed to have music. I don't want to dance. Good afternoon. Welcome. It's first day of UNEA, and we're talking about water. Okay. There we go. That's the energy I want to see. Excellencies, colleagues, friends, water lies at the center of nature-climate-people nexus. It connects the health of our ecosystems, the stability of our climate, and the well-being of our communities. Water moves across borders and landscapes and our bodies, evaporating into atmosphere, returning as rain, feeding our rivers, wetlands, glaciers, which we're talking a lot about, and aquifers, and carrying nutrients and pollution into the ocean. It is a shared resource. It is a shared responsibility. Yet the triple planetary crisis, climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, is disrupting the water cycle in all its forms. Around the world, we face issues around water. Sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's too little, sometimes it's too polluted. These pressures threaten development, ecosystems, livelihoods, they threaten our economies, they threaten our very existence. To respond, we must recognize the full water continuum, from atmosphere to land to ocean, and our policies must be designed to strengthen the resilience of that full water cycle, reduce risks, and support the most vulnerable ecosystems and the most vulnerable people. Integrated water resource management is essential, bringing together sectors, ecosystems, and governance at all levels to manage water sustainably, to bring in different actors, and to address the trade-offs and the opportunities that we face with equity. UNEP plays a leading role in strengthening the global knowledge base on water. As a custodian of SDG indicators 6.61, 651, and 632, UNEP supports countries to measure, monitor, and protect freshwater ecosystems. The 2026 SDG data drive will be a key step in closing knowledge gaps that we all know we need to close. Our science to policy work continues through platforms such as the Global Wetlands Watch, which is a UNEP DHI initiative, improving data on wetlands, critical for climate and biodiversity, the Freshwater Explorer, and the upcoming World Environment Situation Room, advancing digital access to freshwater data. Also integrated water resource management tools and methodologies, enabling evidence-based policies and planning at national and regional levels. Reliable data, coupled with good analysis, underpins effective water management. For example, through the Global Program of Action and legally binding land-based sources protocols, countries benefit from harmonized discharge limits, joint inspections, accident reporting, and shared data, all to prevent pollution from reaching rivers, lakes, and ultimately the ocean. That sounds like a lot. So what else do we need to do? Well, what else we need to do is to strengthen delivery of global and local water agenda together, and we need partnerships. Strong partnerships are essential for progress. The GPA hosts 3 global partnerships tackling marine litter, nutrients, and wastewater with over 1,000 members worldwide. This week, the GPA celebrates its 30th anniversary with the event, A Global Ocean Free from Harmful Impacts of Pollution. By 2050, I expect to see you all there. The World Water Quality Alliance unites governments, scientists, NGOs, and communities to safeguard water quality globally. The private sector is also critical to these partnerships. Through UNEP Finance Initiative, more than 500 banks and insurers with assets exceeding 170 trillion US dollars are integrating water and climate risks. Some examples include Principles for Sustainable Insurance Working for Nature. More than 30 insurers are exploring best practices to manage water impacts. The Nature and Circularity Working Group. We have 20 banks, including the Bank of Africa and ING, promoting water reuse solutions across their portfolios. And there's many more. Regionally, UNEP supports context-specific solutions. Within the European Commission, we're advancing sustainable watershed management in places like Brazil and India, protecting rivers, wetlands, and lakes through integrated water resource management and supporting water cooperation. The CREATES project with Denmark strengthens climate-resilient transboundary water management in Eastern Africa. Friends, our task is clear. We must recognize water as a strategic catalyst for environmental action and for lasting sustainable development. We need to connect mitigation, adaptation, biodiversity, and pollution agendas. Water is fundamental to the resilience of people and planet. Momentum is growing. Water is now firmly on the climate, biodiversity, and development agendas, and UNEP's midterm strategy will embed this vision with and we also have a dedicated freshwater strategy that you'll all see in 2026 to guide our implementation. UNEA Resolution 613 called for the protection, restoration, and sustainable management of water-based ecosystems. As we gather here at UNEA 7, this is our chance to ensure commitments translate into tangible action. So let us collectively commit to mobilize more finance. I know it's hard, especially now, but let us commit to this. Let us collectively commit to driving more capacity in the places it's most needed. Water management requires skilled institutions and professionals. Through UNEP DHI, over 3,400 practitioners have been trained in integrated water resource management. Expanding capacity is essential for monitoring, planning, and managing water resources effectively. Let us collectively commit to accountability. The Baku Dialogue shows how collaboration works. WMO, UNECE, and many others, sorry, I was looking for someone I just met in the room, and UNEP align climate and water agendas from COP to COP, from discussion to discussion, to have a very clear water thread. There you are. The UN Water Action Agenda, adopted at the 2023 UN Water Conference, provides a roadmap for UN agencies to coordinate on SDG 6, to break silos and to deliver measurable progress, but we have a long way to go. Looking ahead, the UN 2026 Water Conference will be a pivotal moment. UNEP with WMO will co-lead the interactive dialogue, Water for the Planet, showing that prosperity depends on protecting the full water cycle from freshwater ecosystems to the ocean, and we invite you to partner with us. We have the frameworks and the science to underpin water sustainability. I would offer we have the resources if we direct them in the right way. But do we have the collective political will? Do Indigenous people, communities, water users, scientists, do they all have the agency they need to engage and create and deliver against strong policies? Certainly, the people in the room here today have that. When we unite across sectors, borders, and disciplines, water is a bridge. Yes, there are challenges. We all face budget cuts and fragmented multilateralism. But here at UNEA, let us use the Nairobi spirit to retain the water ambition that this moment demands. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doreen. What a really powerful opening. My name's Jessica Brown. I'm the Head of Engagement for the Back to Blue initiative at Economist Impact. I'm going to be moderating this event today, and I would like to introduce Ms. Cristina da Avila, Head of the Global Environmental Cooperation and Multilateralism Unit at the European Commission. Thank you.
Esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to contribute to this vital discussion, which touches upon the most fundamental of all resources, water. The session brief frames the challenge perfectly, describing water's journey, its magnificent continuum, from ridge to reef, from source to sea, encompassing every ecosystem and sustaining every life. Water is not merely a commodity. It is a shared global heritage and, critically, a recognized human right. Yet, it is under unprecedented stress. Climate change is rewriting the rules of the hydrological cycle, driving extremes, flood, and drought. Pollution erodes both our natural capital and our public health. And sustainable land use often overlooks one of the most vital components, green water, the moisture stored in our soil and vegetation, which is indispensable for terrestrial ecosystems, carbon sequestration, and stabilizing the cycle. The central challenge before us today is one of governance and, most acutely, investment. We must shift our focus from reactive crisis management to proactive, integrated, and sustainable investment in the entire water continuum. And we in the EU have undergone this strategic shift, moving from blue to holistic. Indeed, in the European Union, we recognize that the future of our economy, biodiversity, and social security depends on water resilience. Our policy response, spearheaded by the EU Water Resilience Strategy from June this year, is a strategic pivot designed to address the interconnected crisis of climate, pollution, and biodiversity loss through the single lens, the water cycle. This strategy provides the governance framework necessary to look beyond traditional blue water management and embrace the full source-to-sea approach. It strengthens the implementation and enforcement of foundational legislation, such as the Water Framework Directive, and critically integrates water security into broader sectoral policies, from agriculture and energy to urban planning. Furthermore, our commitment to water resilience is a cornerstone of global stability. The water resilience strategy operationalizes our obligations under the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Protecting and restoring our river basins and coastlines is priority 3 of Sendai in action, investing in resilience. When we protect our water infrastructure and ecosystems, we fundamentally reduce the risk of water-related disasters, which account for the vast majority of all natural hazards. But let me now move to another imperative, mobilizing investment. Because policy alone cannot fill reservoirs or restore floodplains. We face a significant financial gap in water infrastructure and ecological restoration, estimated at approximately 23 billion euro annually across Europe, or a total global financial gap of 6 trillion euro. Closing this gap requires massive mobilization of public and private capital. The EU is responding with a coordinated financial ecosystem. First, the public sector leadership. We are directing unprecedented resources through our main financial instruments. The cohesion policy has already earmarked over 24 billion euro in the current cycle for sustainable water management and resilience projects. In addition, the Recovery and Resilience Facility provided approximately 12 billion euro focused on water reforms and critical investments in member states. Second, the European Investment Bank has stepped forward, committing to make over 15 billion euro available between 2025 and 2027 through its new water program. This commitment targets infrastructure modernization, pollution control, and most importantly, nature-based solutions. Third, harnessing private capital, as public money must be used to catalyze private action. To de-risk nature-based investments, the Commission is launching initiatives like the Water Resilience Investment Accelerator and developing a roadmap for nature credits. These tools aim to create transparent, bankable projects that attract the private sector by demonstrating the significant returns of investing in nature. And finally, the evidence is clear. Nature-based solutions, such as restoring wetlands, reforesting watersheds to manage green water, and using regenerative agricultural practices are not just environmental luxuries. They are cost-effective, multi-benefit assets. Studies show that the returns on investment in water-related nature-based solutions can be substantial, yielding economic, climate, and biodiversity benefits far exceeding the initial outlay. We have the diagnosis, the policy framework, and the financial mechanisms. The last mile requires integrated execution. We must mainstream the water efficiency first principle, aiming for an EU-wide efficiency improvement of at least 10% by 2030, reducing leakage, promoting reuse, and supporting smart agricultural water management. This is essential for balancing supply and demand fairly. Finally, we must always anchor our investments in the human right to water, focusing resources on the most vulnerable communities and regions, both within the EU, but also globally through initiatives like the Global Gateway. We must make water resilience a baseline requirement for all investment decisions. A think resilience test applied to every relevant policy and project. By committing to integrated governance and channeling significant investment into the protection and restoration of the full hydrological cycle, the European Union is determined to accelerate our progress toward the Sustainable Development Goals and safeguard water security for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Turn it on. Thank you so much, Christina. I'd now like to introduce Ms. Yolanda Lopez. She's both a groundwater expert and a representative of Indigenous people. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope you can hear me well. And thank you for the invitation to attend this event and to bring a very important and relevant perspective, which is the perspective of Indigenous peoples. Today, I want to give you only one message, and I hope through these slides you will see in a minute, you will be able to understand that message and to take you back home. So today I'm going to talk about how Indigenous peoples have been very good to help us to understand the global hydrological cycle. And I will give you specific examples, but if you want to know more about it, feel free to contact me, and I can give you more, not only about the hydrological cycle, but about other earth systems. My name is Yolanda Lopez Maldonado. I'm an indigenous Maya woman. I'm also an Earth system scientist. I have been a member of the IELK Task Force for GEO7, and also I'm currently reviewer editor of the IPBES second global assessment. So, indigenous peoples' knowledge. It's important for me to clarify that knowledge involves different things. It can be knowledge about the environment, but also knowledge about arts, knowledge about textiles. But today I will bring about the precise, accurate, time-tested, sophisticated knowledge of indigenous peoples about understanding natural phenomena. Indigenous peoples, we were the first to observe the planet. It was no Earth satellites. We were the first observing and understanding changes and to adapt to those changes. And we have been doing this since time immemorial and without the technology we have today. For example, we have our own systems for collecting data, for analyzing, categorizing, using, recording, and explaining how this world works. And it comes from a different paradigm and a different perspective compared to mainstream science. This information, I think, is very relevant because of the different challenges we are facing today. And most importantly, this information should be recognized in current global environment and policy frameworks. So next, please. Let me give you a few examples. Next, please. Okay. So to give clear examples about what I'm talking about, I will start with indigenous people's knowledge about cryospheric processes. Indigenous peoples have been very good in observing and understanding the cryosphere. These include, for example, how the different types of snow, its layers, the depth of snow, different pastures for reindeers, and a lot of information has been recorded since time immemorial for people living in those environments and those landscapes, including Arctic people. One example are those indigenous peoples from Siberia, the Nenets. Next slide, please. We have also lacustrine environments. So another example are indigenous First Nations from Canada. They have been very good in lakes governance. This information not only include how to manage landscapes and lakes, but also they have been very good in monitoring water quality based only on multi-decadal observations. This is not folklore, it's very precise and accurate knowledge about the hydrological cycle in that particular area around the world. Next, please. Another example, and I'm very proud to talk about this because it's from my region. Actually, those are my photos. Indigenous people from Mayan communities in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, they have been very good in managing groundwater systems. One example are the cenotes, or which means sinkhole in Maya, in English, sorry. And in the Mayas of Yucatan were very good engineers. They were able to modify the landscape to survive as a civilization and to thrive as a civilization for thousands of years. And this can be also help to, for example, to trace groundwater tracers, and because of the limitations with the tracers is that the time they have to navigate that complexity karstic system. Next slide, please. Next, please. It's not working. And let's talk about the ocean and ocean systems. Indigenous peoples have also been very good in monitoring and understanding how the ocean works. They have been very good also to develop sophisticated navigation techniques. I have the example of the Tiwi people in Australia, and also the ETAC navigation system, and also the Carolinian Star Compacts. This information should be meaningfully recognized, included, and recovered, because a lot of this information has been lost, unfortunately. Next slide, please. And what about atmospheric science? There are many indigenous communities that have been very good in understanding how our weather works, and they have been able to monitor as well this complex system. One example are the Akawayo people. They have been very good, and they have more than 100 different ethnometeorological and hydrological indicators to assess weather and climate. They have bioindicators, including plants and animals, physical indicators, but also cosmological indicators. So I can give more examples, but I know that time is very limited, and actually I would like to apologize because we have a side event just in the other venue. I need to move from here to another, but I'm very happy to bring this perspective to you, and in order to attract your attention, and I will really recommend, I will really ask you for your support on Indigenous peoples' issues in trying to recognize this knowledge as very important and crucial for understanding the water continuum, the global hydrological cycle. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. And you can have here my information, my contact, my email, and I will be very happy to keep in touch with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. And what a fantastic way to demonstrate how all of those different segments fit together, and really often we have the knowledge, it's about translating that knowledge into action. As all of the speakers so far have highlighted, water is really at the very heart of the SDGs, and what we're now seeing is countries translating commitments into action through innovative policies, partnerships and investments that ensure equitable access and sustainable management of water resources. And we're also seeing member states leading the way on climate action. Today we've got an opportunity to learn from their experiences, what's worked, the challenges that remain, and how we can foster stronger collaboration. Now this aligns with UNEP Resolution 613, which calls for effective and inclusive solutions to strengthen water policies, and also builds on synergies with 615 around strengthening ocean efforts to tackle climate change, marine biodiversity loss and pollution. We're looking forward now to the 2026 UN Water Conference, and so it's a really essential moment to highlight how multilateralism can guide and support national actions, and ensure that commitments translate into tangible progress. And that's what it's really about, right? We've got lots of commitments. Implementing those and turning them into action is what really matters. To talk about how this is happening, I'd like to invite two speakers to join me on stage. Ms. Mariela Canepa is advisor to the Minister of Environment's Cabinet for the Government of Peru. Please join me on stage. And also Dr. Patrick Laleba is a specialist scientist in the Climate Change Analysis, Department of Water and Sanitation of South Africa. Please join me in inviting these two speakers onto the stage. Apologies for that was atrocious. Take a microphone each, please, and as I've learned, you do need to turn them on. So I'm glad I made that mistake first. Ms. Canepa, let's start with you. Peru played an active role organising the 24th meeting of the Forum of Ministers of the Environment of Latin America and the Caribbean this year, and also hosted the Latin American and Caribbean Water Summit in May. What are some of the lessons that emerged from these events that really will enable you and your neighbours to accelerate regional cooperation on water security?
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, all of you. Bueno, my team prepared this document and I have to read it for them, I tried to select some issues to answer your questions. First of all, yes, I'm Mariela. I'm advisor the new Minister of Environment. It's amazing, but we have many Ministers of Environment in Peru. The political situation of many countries of Latin America are very difficult, and Peru is one of them. But we are here, facing the crisis also. And regarding the topic, I would like to say very happy that Peru lead the Forum of Ministers of Environment of Latin America and Caribbean during 2024 and 2025. Also, Peru promote the inclusion of water agenda as one of the priority of this forum, and also the executive committee that it held in July in Lima, but also the special session of that forum in Rio with Brazil also. And that was the very good reason to Inter-American Development Bank and also UNEP support us, because that was very important for our minister to organize the Latin American and Caribbean Ministerial Water Summit. And that summit promote dialogue, collaboration, exchange between countries, Latin American countries, sustainable water management, use of water rights, indigenous people rights also. And we talk about that issue. Because it's not easy for us to talk about water in the region. We face different challenge, legal activities. It's around our formal activities, and we try to organize the management of water joint countries in our region. I have to say that in addition of that, we explore in that moment innovative solutions that integrate environmental, social, and economic, and also technical perspective. That ministerial summit was attended about 4 ministers, 4 deputy, high-level authorities, but also we listened to non-state actors. And non-state actors, the first of all was private sector, because we want to join together, we promote to work together with the private sector, because we want to promote, join together, work this similar agenda, but also promote local development. Over.
That's great, thank you so much. And I really take the message about some of the challenges of working at a regional level, but also how important it is to persevere because it's such an important thing. I mean, from Peru's perspective, looking at it from a national perspective, I mean, how are you contributing to the implementation of this roadmap? And what are the opportunities that you see for aligning this regional collaboration with both your national priorities in Peru, but also your global commitments?
The one of result of this forum was the water roadmap. And that water roadmap means follow different items. The first of all is close the gaps of information. The second one was implement effective tools, manage water resources by basing, strengthen national capacities, implement interventions to guarantee water available or increase resilience for watersheds. And the last one, and this is not the best one, but for me it's very important. It's and also Peru promote to work, as I said, to private sector participation, because we need to build a framework of guidelines to establish by governments, of course. And also Peru promote, because we are leading a process to promoting a mechanism to recover and conserve ecosystem. We call MERECE. MERECE means Payment for Ecosystem Services Mechanism, and also public-private partnership, in order to encourage multi-sector investment to recover ecosystem.
Wonderful. And what I love about UNEA so far, I know it's only day one, but we're just hearing so much about implementation and things that are happening. It's not aspirational stuff, it's things that are really happening. So great to hear that, how to hear those examples. Dr. Labella, you're looking very lonely over there. Do you want to move over, or are you okay? Are you happy there? Okay, no problem. Look, South Africa has also just recently hosted a big meeting, the G20, and this really emphasised the need for investment and financing in water. I'd like to hear from you, what needs to happen to tailor these financing mechanisms to the specific needs of developing countries when it comes to water?
Thank you, Jessica.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Patrick Labella, as Jessica has already said. I am a specialist scientist within the Water and Sanitation Department. And let me start here, Jessica. The climate science is true for everyone, but the responding to climate change science is different for different countries. So looking at the financing mechanisms, obviously, if the climate change is going to impact different countries, which are at the different levels of development, are going to be different, obviously. So the discussion that we are having here is about how are we going to tailor-make the financing mechanisms specifically for countries. The reason for that is that the challenges, the water challenges that we have in developing countries are very much different from the ones in the developed countries. And even within the developing countries, we have a variety of challenges that are, from one country to the other. So it cannot be a one blanket covers everyone. So there has to be a different approach for every country. So, for instance, we have different economic structures. If you compare the developed countries to those of the countries that are already developed, we have different institutional capacities that are very much different from the developing countries. So, the developing countries, when you come to the financing mechanisms, there has to be a way the capacity, looking at their ability of the different funding mechanisms. If you were to look at your loans, if you want to mitigate the impact of climate change in a developing country, you're going to have to look at the capacity to actually pay back, or the ability to pay back the loans. And as well as, are we ready? Do we understand? Do we clearly understand the climate change and its implications in our country? If we are able to do that, then we'll be able to say, this are the funding, prioritizing the funding should be in this manner. So when we're looking at that, it means we have to tailor-make our funding mechanisms in the developing countries. That is for sure.
And how do you think the outcomes of the G20 can be leveraged to mobilise support for water-related investments? I take your point that it's important to have different types of financing mechanisms and approaches depending on the country, but ultimately it comes down to the ability to raise that capital, right, to raise that financing. So how can we really leverage those outcomes of the G20 to raise that investment and raise the level of global support for water-related initiatives, particularly as we go into the 2026 UN Water Conference?
The G20 concentrated on 4 pillars, specifically speaking to the climate change impact and how we are going to respond to that as different countries. Obviously, we're looking at the climate mitigation and adaptation, specifically in the water sector. The first pillar was the policy coordination. It's one thing that we needed to look at. That speaks to how are we going to track the financing? What kind of policies are we going to use to track the financing within the country so that we give a clear and transparent, data to say that we are responding in this way and these are the gaps that we have, and then what kind of policies are going to manage that or govern that. And the second thing is that we already have the investment pipelines that every country, developing country, has got to say, these are the projects that we'd like to see taking place in our country in order to mitigate or to respond towards the climate change. So those investments, obviously, they have risks that are associated with when it comes to the financing mechanisms. So that we have to look at how we're going to de-risk those mechanisms when it comes to finances. That is the second pillar. Meaning that how are we going to handle the future G20, the outcomes of the G20, in such a way that we have a legacy that is carrying on without, any challenges. And the fourth one is the transparency. When it comes to transparency, most of the developing countries, especially in the African region, there is still a need for being educated when it comes to the carbon markets, leveraging on the carbon markets to say that we can use the carbon markets to finance our systems. And also understanding the carbon markets will also assist us to access the financing, because if we understand what is happening in the climate arena, climate change arena, and then we participate, we're not only sitting back and looking at who's going to give us money, and we take the initiative. So there is a need for that. So the transparency in the market, in the carbon market, and the integrity thereof was very important for this. So in conclusion, the G20 came out with two main outcomes that govern all these things. There's 4 pillars that I've already spoken to. The first one is the Global Outlook Council on water investment. So this council gives water a permanent seat on the table among the world leaders, governments, multilateral banks, and private investors. It promotes the water investment in the world globally, to say that what we have been neglecting for such a long time should be elevated to a level where we are serious about it. And the second thing, which is the second outcome which supports that, is the Global Water Investment Platform. The Global Water Investment Platform speaks to how are we going, what kind of financing mechanisms are we going to access, and how ready are we, and do we know how those mechanisms should be dealt with. So the two go together. You have one, which is binding the leaders, the political leaders, to say we need to do this. We need to elevate the water, the resilience of the water resources against the climate change. And the second one is, how are we going to do that? Taking all, all being responsible for that. So the last part of your question was that how is this going to help the UN going forward, the UN conference, the 2026 conference? So by embedding water into the agendas of the G20 and the UN progress processes, obviously we are elevating these to another level, to say that the issues that we've been shying away from talking about, especially the funding part of things, should be taken into consideration. So I see the outcomes of the UN 2026 speaking mainly on how are we going to approach the funding mechanisms for climate change.
Thank you. And if I can also direct a similar version of that to you, Ms. Canepa. We talk a lot about these different dialogues. We're at one right now, and we're talking about how do we make sure that these discussions lead into the 2026 Water Conference. I mean, how do we ensure that these all effectively join together and that they translate into real outcomes and real action at a national level?
I think we need to ensure the participation of non-state actors, because the water is around the local communities. It's near there. It's near of that communities, and we need to include it when we decided, when we construct a policy and public policy. We need to hear that people that needs, but also we need to talk close with private sector, because we need to promote natural resources conservation, but also local development.
Do you see that happening?
It's so hard, but we need it. And also, to ensure the participation of non-state actors is so expensive for countries like us. I remember when we established the climate change law, we did a huge dialogues and regional dialogues, also subnational dialogues. And that process for us cost $1 million. $1 million. Yeah. Because we construct that law, respect all the criteria that we thought and we talk in the international community. And it's so expensive.
Yeah.
but just try to think if it's impossible for us to construct all the policies, or all the law, or all the frameworks, or the public policy for us, for each one. It's so difficult. And, I think I also confirm that I believe in the multilateralism, but it's so difficult in this moment to receive money for them.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I support and repeat that we need to construct a very transparent relationship with private sector.
Dr. Chabela, from your perspective, I guess two questions. One, what's South Africa's approach to this? We've heard about Peru's approach, but what approach is South Africa taking? And particularly to your earlier comments about really trying to kind of integrate water into climate financing, and also, how do we go about recognising the value of fresh water within these financing mechanisms?
The first thing is that, we have been responding to climate change somehow, but without realizing that we are. The protection of the water resources somehow stems from what is happening around the water resources. So in most cases, we've been doing that, but we haven't been doing that intentionally. So we haven't been looking at that as a climate financing. We've been looking at that as just protection of the water resources. But when you start looking at the climate change itself to say, what are the impacts of climate change basically, and you separate them from maybe other impacts on the water resources, that's when you start saying, how much am I spending on climate change initiatives, So in South Africa, what we have is we have what we call the National Treasury, which is the organization that is funding all the departments, different departments for all the, states' actions. So we have started what we call the climate fund tagging, meaning that we're looking at any activity that is associated with the work that we are doing in response to the climate change. So in that way, we are able to say how much of our fiscals goes into climate change initiatives. So that's the first thing that we are doing. And I believe that the G20 summit as well somehow was informed with the activities that are happening within our country to say how we're doing that. And then we're looking at every sector to say how are you responding to this. But specifically in the water sector, we're looking at the mitigation actions that we are taking. We're looking at also the adaptation actions that we are taking, and then we're putting a tag on that this is the climate change fund that is going there. So in that way, when we have to access the funding from outside, we'll be able to say, here is the data. This is what the government has been doing so far. This is how we are investing in climate change impact, analysis as well as response. And then we are able to access funding in that way, in a way of transparency. And the second question on the value of fresh water, whether we are doing that. You see, valuing the fresh water has to look beyond the economic value of water, has to look beyond, can we get business out of water? We have to look at how water sustains life, the ecosystem, the food chains, and everything. If you only look at the economic value of managing water, then you're not valuing the fresh water as a whole. So countries, when we respond to that, when we have to say, why should we protect the fresh water? We should look at all these elements to say that it's not only about money, it's about livelihoods, it's about the sustainability of the planet, sustainability of the ecosystems.
Thank you so much. And in the interest of time, we'll have to wrap this up, but you will have an opportunity to direct some questions to these panellists afterwards. We'll be having a Q&A session. So please, for now, join me in thanking Ms. Mariella Canepa and Dr. Patrick Chabela. And thank you. And as I said, you'll have an opportunity to direct some questions to them afterwards. Thank you. Now, we heard during Doreen's introduction about the Baku Dialogue and its role in ensuring the continuity of water integration into the climate agenda and in accelerating the dialogue's COP-to-COP momentum. Since its inception, the Baku Dialogue, under the leadership of Azerbaijan's COP29 presidency, has brought together member states and partners to advance integrated water and climate solutions, foster regional collaboration and strengthen resilience. The initiative is jointly delivered by UNEP, WMO and UNECE, and it will support countries and stakeholders in translating political commitments into action through 3 work packages. These are the Global Advocacy and Coordination to scale up water for climate action at UNEP, science-based support at the WMO and policy action at UNECE. As we look towards COP31 and beyond, the question is, how can we scale up these efforts, deepen partnerships, and invite more countries to join this dialogue? So today's discussion is an opportunity to share lessons learned, identify gaps, and chart the course for the next phase of the Baku Dialogue, and really asking the question of how do we make this a cornerstone of global water and climate cooperation? So I'd like to invite 3 speakers to the stage to share with us how this is progressing. Kamala Husseinieli, First Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Azerbaijan. Francesca Berdinini is Chief of the Transboundary Cooperation Section at UNECE. And Sarah Oweki is Associate Program Officer at UNEP. Thank you so much. Kamala, if I can direct the first question to you, and you've got a microphone there, that's great. Can you talk us through the achievements of the Baku Dialogue to date and tell us, is there really a vision towards COP31? What does that look like?
Yeah, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. There is a vision beyond COP31. So, yes, indeed. Before I start talking about the initiative, I just wanted to briefly tell you about where we come from, like my story, Azerbaijan's story. So it's a country between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, and while we do have access to the Caspian Sea, which is actually the world's biggest lake, we do not have direct access to the Black Sea, so that's why we are a landlocked country. We are a downstream country, and 70% of our water resources are formed outside our borders. We are water insecure, we are water stressed, our water is polluted, and I like this way of saying, diplomatically, too much or too little water. But we need to understand, when we say too much water, that doesn't mean an abundance of freshwater reserves. That means floods and pollution and devastated infrastructure, ecosystem, lives and livelihoods. And when we say too little water, that basically means the same, but without water. And Azerbaijan, being a very small country, actually experiences both. Simultaneously sometimes, with one following the other. So when we assumed the COP presidency, we knew that we need to address this topic, especially given that this wasn't only our issue. As we realized, this is a global issue, as hydrological cycle is... I think I'm losing it. Yeah, so the hydrological cycle is responding differently, and it doesn't really matter whether you are a developing, landlocked, or an island country. You are equally impacted by this change, which is a climate change crisis. Water is a climate change crisis, and climate change is a water crisis. So we looked at how water issues were addressed at the platform of climate, and we saw that it wasn't really present there for a very long time. Previous presidencies have done a good job in kind of bringing this topic to the platform, but we wanted to make sure that the topic is maintained on the platform regardless of the presidency's focus, because each presidency, they want to bring in to focus something that is important for them, which is very valid for each country. but we also wanted to make sure that this common problem remains addressed at the platform. So we put forward this Water for Climate Action Declaration that is to date endorsed by 73 countries, and it's a multi-stakeholder initiative, so we also have non-state parties, non-state actors that are also part of this platform. And this declaration has brought forward the Baku Dialogue on Water for Climate Action, which serves as a COP-to-COP continuity platform that will continuously talk about water and its interplay with biodiversity, with the triple planetary crisis, basically, with connecting the topics under the three Rio Conventions. So what we did throughout this year after launching it in November 2024 is we worked together with the Brazilian presidency, which is an endorsing country of this initiative, to prepare an implementation package of this dialogue. So we worked together with UNEP, UNEC, and WMO, which are the three partners under this initiative, on the three major pillars. The three major pillars, the work streams that my colleagues will present later, they built on the actual declaration. The three pillars, the governance, cooperation, policymaking, science. These are very important pillars. Unfortunately, although we do share around or over 60% of waters around the world, we still lack cooperation among countries. And for us to be able to address the problem properly, we need to be cooperating with our neighbors to mainstream water into our policy decisions, to prevent what we don't want to happen, and to kind of sustain this water resource in a way that we can equitably utilize it. We need to cooperate with our neighbors. So this is something that is really pinned to the idea of this Baku dialogue. Currently, we're looking forward to working with the incoming COP31 presidencies, and we know there are two, towards presenting you the actual work under the main work stream packages that my colleagues will further present to you. And for this, we do need support, including financial support from participating stakeholders. And we do need countries that are sharing basins to actually come to this platform. And I'm happy to continue further on the contribution of the Baku Dialogue towards the global processes, including the UN Water Conference. Maybe further as we go, and I pass the floor to my colleagues to present the work streams that these respective UN entities are responsible for, based on their comparative advantage, experience, expertise on the subject. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Sarah, I think we'll go to you next. Can you talk us through UNEP's work package and how that's contributing to the dialogue?
Yes, sure. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me, or us. So as mentioned already by Jessica and Kamala, we are now really operationalizing or implementing the initiative. I think this has been focused. UNIA 7 is about implementation, COP30 also, and we're also with the Baku Dialogue now looking at implementation. So as was mentioned, we are basing the initiative on the 3 action areas, on the COP29 Water Declaration. And the initiative itself is hosted by UNEP, but obviously working together with UNEC, WMO, and COP presidencies in delivering it. So the work packages, so each agency has a specific work package they would lead on, which is, governed by the mandate of the respective agencies. But of course, we will still work together in the implementation of the different work packages. So UNEP will lead on the first work package, or the first action area on global advocacy and coordination to scale up water for climate action, promote dialogue, knowledge sharing, and implementation through partnerships. So essentially, we aim to strengthen COP-to-COP synergies. Kamala already has spoken about that. And strengthen continuity and coherence in water-related processes of the UNFCCC, but also I wanted to highlight the CBD and the UNCCD. Of course, we recognize that water climate nexus is closely linked to the degradation of freshwater ecosystems and the related biodiversity in desertification. So of course we also are going to link the dialogue to the relevant global processes on that. We also aim to advocate for and support the development of collaborative and aligned water-related climate actions and policies, organize South-South and triangular cooperation, dialogues to facilitate the knowledge and also the data sharing on climate observations and research and also related water dynamics, enhance the effective implementation of water-related initiatives, which were launched in the margins of, for example, UN climate change conferences, and also coordinate with other major multilateral water events. So of course, we have already heard about the 2026 UN Water Conference and also the following 2028 Water Conference. And then lastly, we also aim to mobilize diverse partnerships and cooperation to enable investment, again, something that we have just spoken about in water, and also including investments in healthy freshwater ecosystems and water at its source. So as host of the initiative, we again really wanted to acknowledge the generous support from the European Commission that was highlighted by Doreen in her opening remarks, and this contribution also includes seed funding to the Baku Dialogue as a means to support the implementation and operationalization of it. We also feel very encouraged by the support from member states so far, and really look forward to implementing the initiative towards 2026 UN Water Conference, towards COP31, but also obviously beyond, looking towards 2030. And I think with that I can hand over to Francesca to talk about UNECE and WMO contribution. Thank you.
Thanks, Francesca. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. And first of all, thanks, colleagues, for the organization of this event. And it's an opportunity for UNECE to congratulate again Azerbaijan for launching the Baku Dialogue and also for expressing our great pleasure in working together with UNEP and WMO on its support. Before looking at the work package, I think it's worth stepping back and looking at the progress in the past year, because I think a lot has been achieved. And this main objective of ensuring the continuity of the water and climate nexus discourse in the climate negotiation, I think you can be really proud of what happened in Belém. It was a very successful event with a very high participation. And I think it was also very strategic to organize an event in the June negotiation at UNFCCC. So that's really showed that, and in all these events there was a lot of attendance, and even also in the technical side event on mainstreaming water in NDC and NAPS, we had a very good discussion between water expert, climate expert on this very important issue that is the tool through which water consideration can be mainstream in climate policy. So that shows that the dialogue is bearing already fruit. And indeed, it's also very interesting to see it shaping with a concrete work package. And if I look at what UNECE does, obviously, as mentioned by Kamala, we all build on our different organizations' specific capacity and comparative advantage, and work in UNECE under the Water Convention has started already back in 2002. So the Water Convention is a rapidly globalizing framework for transboundary water cooperation with new parties joining the instrument. This year we had we had Bangladesh and Sierra Leone, and a couple more countries hopefully joining before the end of the year, and 130 countries participating in its activity at the global level. And as I said, work on climate change is already almost 2 decades, more than two decades old. And it's focused through an intergovernmental mechanism, so the task force, the Water Convention Task Force on Water and Climate. It aims at providing specific guidance on how to adapt to climate change in transboundary basin, to support capacity building and the sharing of experience, and also to translate this in specific project on the ground through assistance to country and basin in strengthening resilience. And as an example of a guidance document, of a tool that's developed through the platform of the task force, through experts coming from all over the world, is the recently developed action-oriented document on mainstreaming water supply, sanitation, and transboundary water management and cooperation into NDCs and NAP. And I come back to this issue because we feel it's particularly important. We did a study several years ago of NDCs and NAPs, and the result on how water issues were reflected in this planning tool was quite scary. Water was very much in the background. Transboundary cooperation wasn't happening. There's no transboundary risk. And that's why, in that respect, under the Water Convention, we really try to focus on make those people who are developing at the national level NDC and MAP aware of what are the risks and how they can be translated. So this action-oriented document shows, highlights the issue, but also shows example of how this, particularly the transboundary dimension, can be included in this planning document. And none of this work could be happening thanks to the precious support of the European Union, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Switzerland, which I really thank for their support to all the work on climate. But this work under the Water Convention, under the Baku Dialogue, and by all other experts, and a lot of us in this room are working on this, is progressively bearing fruit. If we look at the most updated NDCs, the results are slightly better. We saw, for instance, that 44% of parties to the Climate Change Convention refer to regional collaboration in their NDC. So the mentality is shifting, and that's where we need to work more actively on that. And we also was very positive that in all the debate on the global goal on adaptation, the transboundary dimension was strong. Now water is strongly embedded in it. We have 9 indicators. We would have liked to have stronger transboundary indicator, but we have 9 water indicators, and I think we need to work on that, to build on that. And obviously, as Secretariat to the Water Convention, and also with all our UN partner and with parties to the instrument, we're really working, supporting these processes in the framework of the climate negotiation. More needs to be done. In Belém, in the official discussion, water was missing, and we have to remember that. We are not there yet, and that's a problem, and that's why we need the Baku dialogue. So looking ahead what UNEC will be doing, again, building on what we were strong in doing, mainstreaming water into climate policies through facilitating knowledge exchange and peer learning. The intergovernmental platform of the convention is unique and needs to be leveraged, so we will be continuing to organize task force meetings and discuss about this issue. We will also continue feeding and informing the discussion on the Belém adaptation indicator, on the global goal on adaptation, and the Nairobi work program. And pending availabilities of resources, we would also be able to provide direct assistance to countries in how to implement and coordinate water action in their NDCs and NAPs. But this would require targeted assistance. And this could be done across the world. Secondly, we will try to compile best practices on the water-climate nexus, because a lot has been done, and as we heard today, we need to learn from others, and in particular, integrated approach like IWRM and Source to Sea, so that's something that we need to leverage, and we will be developing a knowledge document in the framework of the Baku Dialogue, also leveraging another important group that the convention support, which is the global network of basin working on climate change adaptation, which bring together basin throughout the world, which are working on this issue, and there are not so many. Growing, but not so many. And then finally, we will support national and transboundary water-related adaptation strategy and plan, like we've been doing in the past. We've been supporting a number of river basin in the pan-European region with assessing vulnerability, developing joint scenario in the basin, but also implementing adaptation measures like afforestation or information management or more efficient irrigation. And we'll be doing this mostly in the pan-European region, but now with the global dimension and with a growing number of countries from around the world, we expect to be doing this also in Latin America, in Africa, where most of the countries are joining from the convention. And this is what our UNEC plan. But as WMO colleague could not join, I also have the opportunity to share what will be done by WMO in the work stream on science-based support. And we know that in a changing world, data is more important than ever. And WMO recent report on the state of global water resources indicates that the hydrological system is getting less predictable. The hydrological cycle and river regime are changing rapidly with consequences on water management for agriculture, drinking water, hydropower, and ecosystem. And obviously, WMO as a science organization and a standard setting organization is mostly strengthening its support to its member and partner to develop a trusted, sustainable hydrological information infrastructure as part of the Earth system value chain. And this system is contributing to the Early Warning for All initiative. WHO initiatives such as HydroHub, embarking innovative approaches for monitoring, and HydroSOS that inform on current and subseasonal hydrological data are contributing to this effort. And sorry, I read because WMO colleagues have provided this, and I want to be loyal to what they say. So data are no use if they are not shared to all stakeholders, and this is why WMO has adopted the unified data policy, urging data providers to exchange data, at least those that can save lives. Along those lines, WMO is leading the World Water Data Initiative that aims at making data collection and sharing more effective and develop advocacy to incite governments to invest in hydrological monitoring, supported by WMO information system that provide the technical solution to partner. And I think we heard speaker before me talking about the importance of financial resources. I will hint to the fact that this is what will keep this effort going, and thank again the EU for their contribution.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all of our speakers on the Baku Dialogue. And you know what I'm hearing is there's been some fantastic progress and a lot to be proud of, but there's still a lot of work to do. A quick question to each of you, and very quickly because we're almost on time, but you know, what's at the very top of your wish list to get the next bit of work done? What do you really need?
What do we really need? We need a universal membership. Yes, and funding for implementing what we have on our list, because our list is very ambitious. It is very productive if we manage to put it in work, and really makes me personally very excited on the work towards the future of this Baku Dialogue, towards 2030 and beyond. So this is what we need. This is very ambitious, but you know, I like to be ambitious.
So member states sign up and fund it.
Those that are, yeah, those that are in the capacity to do so, yes.
Okay. Sarah, Francesca, what's top of your wish list?
The good thing of being second is that I don't have to repeat the first, and I can focus on what I think is very important, is the action on the ground. Does it work? Sorry.
Yeah, that's better.
So action on the ground. As I was saying before, resilience at the regional level, at the basin level, needs to be strengthened. And in most of transboundary basin, we're not ready. So I don't get my wish. What about now? So what I would like to see more countries starting to work on adaptation to climate change at the transboundary level, at the basin level, and also recognizing that this can be an important driver for cooperation, because if we don't cooperate, misalignment between action at the national level can completely nullify them.
Sarah, what's your wish?
Thank you. I think we can all agree to Kamala's point, definitely. But I think just to complement, I think it's also highlighted in the Water Declaration, but just really having global, regional, national, and local action. And I think also not to forget the indigenous knowledge we've heard about from the Peruvian speaker today. And we had a meeting at the World Water Week in Stockholm, and there was really some powerful voices there. And I think it's also really highlighted in the declaration, and important, I think, to also have that indigenous and citizen science knowledge. So, yeah.
Excellent. So we've got a shopping list of things to do. We all know what we need to do. So thank you so much. Please join me in thanking these three fantastic speakers. Now, we're going to have a presentation. I'll introduce that in a second, but get ready, because after this will be your opportunity to ask some questions. So please get your questions ready so we can be ready to ask them. And now I'd like to invite to the stage Joachim Harlin, Chief Manager of the UNEP DHI Centre for Water and Environment.
Thank you very much. I have 4 minutes, so this is going to go quick. I've been asked to talk about advancing water education and capacity building, and also about UN initiatives to chartering the path, including the 2026 UN Water Conference. So here goes. If it works. Doesn't work. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, it worked big time. Oh, there we go. Oh. I'm too fast. So, I've listed here 3 main initiatives that are at the global level. First of all, the UN Water's SDG 6 Capacity Development Initiative. And this is part of this Water Action Agenda that we talked about, that comes from the UN 2023 Water Conference. And capacity development is one of those 5 action areas. And this is an interagency platform. There are about 35 members in it. UNESCO and UNDESA are in the driving seat. Another one here is CAPNet. CAPNet is the International Capacity Development Network for Sustainable Water Management. It's kind of different. This network is not based so much on international organizations. It's a network of networks in the South. So we have capacity development networks in developing countries, and they together are coordinated by CAPNet Secretariat. 23 different networks there. So very much building on local training for people in service. Lastly, we have Water Education Network, GWEN, which is kind of a more recent network. IG Delft, CAPNet, CIWI, UNESCO are there. You will see that they're part of all these other ones as well. Here the focus is more on education, not so much about training professional staff. We can look a little bit of what we've been doing in UNEP when it comes to online water courses that were past couple of years. We can see top of the list the sustainable lake management. This came about because of the UN resolution on lake management. We've been working on integrated drought monitoring and management, looking at IWRM for climate resilience, water pollution, gender IWRM, and a number of different training courses related to the SDG indicators that UNEP is custodian agency for. Now, there's a lot of talk about the conference in 2026. It's going to be in UAE, 2nd to 4th December next year, co-hosted by Senegal and UAE. And it's the 3rd conference of this nature, but you can see it's only the 2nd in the recent string of 3 here. The first was already in 1977, so it was a big gap. And it comes from a UN resolution, and there will be a high-level preparatory meeting now in Dakar, 26th to 27th of January. And this meeting is very important because it's going to be about developing a shared vision, ambition for the conference, and prepare also how it's going to be run, and who are going to be the co-chairs of different interactive dialogues and so on. It is going to include then 7 plenary meetings and 6 interactive dialogues, and I'll come to that in a bit. Next slide. Okay. It's not a negotiated outcome document from this, even if it's a UN conference. There will be a summary of proceedings. So it's not like UNEA, where we have resolutions that are agreed by members or member states. There will be a summary of proceedings done by the presidents of the conference. That's how it works. And here we have the interactive dialogues that have been agreed. Very similar to the 2023 conference. There's one extra one at the end there. But you see water for people, very much related to water supply, sanitation, hygiene issues. The co-leads for drafting the document for that interactive dialogue is they are WMO and UNICEF. Then we have the productive uses of water, energy, food nexus, and looking at also wastewater and the whole economic side and social development side of water. We have UNDP, FAO, and UNIDO leading that. And then we have Water for the Planet. This is where UNEP comes in. We are, together with IAEA and WMO, co-leading this one with climate, biodiversity, and related topics. Water for Cooperation was the theme that we had just before the session, and also talked about it here. There we have transboundary water governance and cooperation, but also collaboration and cooperation within countries. UNEC and UNESCO leading that. And then we have water in multilateral processes. This is also a theme that we talked about now. How can we get water across different MEAs and COPs, and also for the post-2030 agenda. UNDESA, UNDRR are leading that. Investments for water, we have financing, technology, innovation, capacity building, and I know that the World Bank and a few other partners are part of that one. So before we have the 2026 Water Conference, after Dakar, there will be the high-level political forum in July in New York, and its SDG 6 is up for review. So UN Water is preparing a synthesis report. We're looking and taking stock of the past 10 years. Has SDG 6 been useful? Has it made any difference? Bringing the latest data, science, and of course from all the monitoring of the SDG 6 indicators. We're looking at the impact on policy, importance for collaboration across centers. There's also a forward-looking part here. How do we then try to scale up action for the next 5 years, for 5 years that remain, but then also going beyond in the post-2030 development agenda, and then some recommendations. And I'll come to show you some final slide here. So part of this exercise has been to do a global consultation, and maybe many of you have been taking part of that questionnaire. And these are just some quick findings, haven't been published, but will feed into the report. So we had 1,261 responses, and you can see from which regions we had those coming, a lot from Africa and Asia Pacific. People were working quite across the board there on WASH, WRM, and both water resources management and WASH services. And in terms of what level, national, sub-national, and local levels, as well as also regional and global. But it was good that we could reach to the national and sub-national levels. And just quickly what they said can we move my little guy here in the end to somewhere else so I can see what it says there? Doesn't matter. Oh, there we go. So this is one of the questions. You know, on a scale 1 to 10, how much has SDG 6 helped to make progress in advancing or addressing water and sanitation challenges? And the average score from everyone was 6.5. And it kind of reflects, I think, the main, what's coming through, that SDG 6 has been useful. And we've made a lot of progress, but not enough. And there are a lot of feedback on what could be done better. But on the question then, is it important to have water in the post-2030 development framework? Is it valuable? And the answer was, as you can see at the top there, extremely valuable. So we're going to have to work to develop such and position ourselves to have a dedicated goal on water even in the next generation of SDGs. So I think that was my final slide. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Joachim. And there's a lot of work to do, as we've heard. And what is going to be critical is partnerships. We can't work alone. So now I'd like to turn it over to everyone in the audience. You've been warned, so I hope you have prepared your questions. I'm going to first direct a question to Sophie Sandstrom from the IUCN. And you know, can you just tell us how you think partnerships can and are amplifying action towards the global water agenda?
Now it's on. Thank you so much. Thank you for this very useful event. And I just want to quickly respond to what Joachim said. You know, I don't think we have to look at it as water being a standalone goal in the next post-2030 framework alone. We really need to approach the whole design of the framework with water as like a foundational framework, because none of the other goals, no development will be possible unless we address the water issue in a really, really meaningful manner. On the issue of partnerships, for partnerships to be effective in advancing the global water agenda, they really have to be rooted in local constituencies. And in this regard, I wanted to highlight a project that was mentioned today by Doreen in her opening remarks, the CREATES project that is generously supported by Danida, CREATE stands for Climate Resilient Eastern African Transboundary Water Management for Environmental Sustainability. One can understand why they came up with this snappy little CREATE title for that, because that's a long title. The project consists of two parts, and the first part is effective decision support systems and capacity building. That is led by UNEP and DHI. And the second part is improved river basin governance, stakeholder coordination, and action on the ground for water cooperation and climate resilient water solutions, focusing specifically on two basins, the Mara River Basin here in Kenya and the Siyo-Malaba-Malakisi Basin, which borders Uganda and Kenya, sorry. And what it has to do with partnerships? Well, in addition to bringing together all these international organizations and donors, it really includes some very innovative models on partnerships to enhance coordination and inclusion of stakeholders at all levels. So in addition to the normal project coordination structures, you also have a strategic advisory panel consisting of government representatives from all the 3 countries concerned, as well as representatives from the regional institutions and other key stakeholders in the region. And then, at a more local level, you have a structure for basin to community coordination that includes representatives from county and local government authorities, as well as water user associations. So through this model, one can see that improving climate resilient integrated water management strategies and governance arrangements can contribute to improved regional stability, improved socioeconomic development, as well as environmental sustainability for water security. And such models could hopefully be replicated elsewhere. And that's what we're looking at the 26th conference as one that could really take some of these success stories from various parts of the world and identify what it is that should be streamlined and turned into a global policy for water that would really transform how we use this viable resource. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any comments, questions from the floor? What else could be transformative ahead of the 2026 Water Conference? Does anyone want to contribute? I could go around and start picking on people. Yep, there's someone just in the middle, in the plaid shirt. Yep.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Odinga Isaiah Abur, representing Citizen Voice and Action, that is Jokinda Action. I'm representing the indigenous. I've heard about groundwater, where most of the indigenous are suffering. What are the specific support in terms of funding and technical tools and legal recognition would you most empower in such community to implement its own vision for groundwater? Because here, where you find that most of the indigenous are suffering, and they are having their own legals that they are implementing. And some of them are dying just because they don't have the tools that they can use to identify where there is water. And some of them are digging wells. They find that the water is contaminated and risking their life. So what are you going to put in place so that can help such people? Thank you.
Thank you. And is that a question to any of the panelists or a comment? That's a question. Would anyone like to comment on that? And the question, I think, was how to ensure that financing for water management and groundwater management is channeled to Indigenous communities and to local communities. Patrick, do you have a response to that in terms of your thoughts on how financing can be channeled to Indigenous communities in particular? Just to put you on the spot.
Okay, let me attempt that. Yeah, you see, two things here. The groundwater, as the water that we cannot see, has been neglected for a long time. And then, marginalized communities depend on that. And the reason that we have been concentrating a lot on the infrastructure, the water that has got a formal infrastructure, has delayed the process of financing the groundwater. Access into groundwater, especially in the rural communities. So I think this needs to be put together into the whole kitty. When you look at financing water for sustainability, the groundwater is about time groundwater be taken into consideration. And then obviously you look at where is it more important, and then when you start financing, you look at those areas to say, how do we finance the rural areas to access the groundwater?
Thank you so much. And we're almost on time. Does anyone have a final comment or question? Yes, one over here.
It's more a response, and I think that this issue about groundwater is very important. And in 2022, UN Water had its campaign on making the invisible visible, and we had a special report on groundwater, and there are organizations, EGRAC, for example, working on this topic, part of UNESCO, and many others. But I think that if it's something I actually made a note of myself, I thought that maybe in the post-2030 agenda, when we look at targets and indicators, to strengthen the role of monitoring groundwater in particular. We have it baked into SDG 6.6, but I think it could have a stronger role. It's so important for also water supply and sanitation, especially in the rural areas, but it's also important for freshwater ecosystems and for many, dimensions of water. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now to wrap up our discussion, I'd like to invite Gareth James Lloyd from the UNEP DHI Centre, who's going to give us a few reflections. Would you like this or do you like that?
I'll go up top and then I can see everyone as well. Have a place for my... Can you hear me? Yeah, thanks. Dear colleagues, I'd like to start by thanking the session speakers, the participants and the organisers for this great event. It's been very enjoyable and informative. I was invited to come with some key takeaways, and I realize we're late in the day, so I'll do that quite concisely, so don't worry. I think we've heard and agreed that a systems approach makes a lot of sense. I think it was Francesca in the session just earlier who came up with the number of how freshwater ecosystem services is estimated to provide $50 trillion worth of value annually on a global scale. I know these numbers are open to question, but I think, again, it's good to be reminded and to highlight that what we already have is a tremendous asset. Harnessing this investment is not just about the fish and the frogs. It's about the people and the planet and our shared future, of course. So how do we do it? Who's going to do it and when? We talked a little bit about these things. It's about combining sustainable land, water, forest management in ways that make sense in the given context. And of course, those are variable, but consistent in terms of combining and integrating. We need to scale up, we need to capacitate, and we also talked about the need for financing with tools and guidelines having an important role here. But who's going to do all this hard work? That was a question, but of course, we're already doing it, or we're at least trying in many cases. So, for example, we talked about IWRM, we talked about sustainable forest management, we talked about ecosystems-based management, and also, of course, indigenous approaches that have been used for thousands of years. If you're sitting in this room, then you and your work are almost certainly relevant to this ongoing effort. But it would seem like we need to get ourselves a little bit more organized and have a bit more structure around the efforts, perhaps. And we talked quite a lot about 2026 as being an important year of opportunities, including, but not limited to, the UN 2026 Water Conference, the Baku Dialogue, and I think some focus as well on the continuing dialogue around the UNFCCC Global Goal on Adaptation was also mentioned. These and other ongoing initiatives are opportunities for us to join together and make a difference through binding commitments, action-oriented approaches, and of course, taking finance into account, including those all-important costs and benefits. I think that's all I have to say for now. Very happy to chat over a drink shortly. I'll be passing over to Maria to close the session. But many thanks for listening. I wish you a continuing, inspiring, and productive UNEA.
Thank you so much, Gareth. And just to wrap up, please join me in thanking all of our speakers and participants from today. I'm sure you'll agree it's been a fantastic discussion. So a big round of applause for all of our speakers. And also finally to the organisers who have done a fantastic job of bringing this together. And Marie, you've done a great job, so well done. We'd just like to finish today with a very short video, which is highlights UNEP's work about the importance of the water continuum. Thank you so much.
L'acqua sulla Terra è sempre in viaggio. Il vapore si accumula nell'aria, si trasforma in pioggia e neve, alimenta fiumi, ghiacciai e foreste, riempie laghi e zone umide e dà vita al suolo. L'oceano e la vegetazione sulla terraferma determinano le precipitazioni in tutto il mondo, creando fiumi nel cielo che trasportano l'acqua da un continente all'altro. Gran parte di questa pioggia proviene dal vapore acqueo rilasciato da foreste, praterie e zone umide. Quando le foreste vengono perse in una regione, le precipitazioni possono diminuire in un'altra. Anche il cambiamento climatico interrompe questo ritmo, modificando la quantità di pioggia che cade, dove cade rendendo le inondazioni e le siccità più frequenti e intense. Il modo in cui utilizziamo il territorio, proteggiamo gli ecosistemi, compresi fiumi e zone umide, e rispondiamo al cambiamento climatico è fondamentale. La gestione dell'acqua non riguarda solo dighe e bacini idrici, riguarda anche il modo in cui riduciamo l'inquinamento dei fiumi, trattiamo le acque reflue, ci adattiamo al cambiamento climatico e produciamo cibo. L'agricoltura sostenibile e il ripristino di foreste, laghi e zone umide influenzano direttamente la qualità e la disponibilità dell'acqua da cui dipendiamo. Insieme ai governi e ai partner, il Programma delle Nazioni Unite per l'Ambiente lavora per proteggere il ciclo dell'acqua per le persone e il pianeta. L'acqua collega diversi ambienti, dalla terraferma all'oceano. Dobbiamo gestirla con attenzione per costruire un futuro sicuro e resiliente per tutti.